Beloveds, this space is a church for Daniel, an autism-friendly virtual oasis for your spirit. I hope we find a new way to do church together, a way that prioritizes people over traditions, a way that celebrates diversity and creativity, and a way that doesn't try to make anyone smaller or quieter. It's a church for my son, Daniel. It's a church for everyone, and it's a church for you.
Here for this very special episode of A Church for Daniel, old friend of mine and longtime colleague, Phillippa Faneuf. So welcome to A Church for Daniel.
I'm excited to be a part of it.
Yeah, totally. Awesome. Yeah, no. And it's wonderful so not only to have you here, but as of this move for me to Honeoye Falls, you and I finally now live in the same general geographic area for the first
Right.
time in 8 years.
I think
Maybe
so. Yeah.
more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah, maybe more because gosh, when were you sent to Queensbury?
2013.
Yeah, so oh gosh, more like 11, 12 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
The ministry is a crazy thing.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
It is. It takes us on adventures that we would have never dreamed possible.
Hmm.
Um, and that's, yeah, it goes back to a mantra that I have picked up is good, bad, who's to say? We just don't know yet. We just don't know enough of the story to be able to judge experiences and events in our lives to make a final ruling as to whether or not it's good or bad. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. On that note, I
Yeah.
wonder how much you'd like to share about what your spiritual journey was and your journey to get into the ministry.
Sure. I grew up Pentecostal. I grew up in an Assemblies of God denomination. Um, and so most of my adult life has been, uh, I think the term that's being used a lot is deconstructing.
Mm,
Um, uh, and I get where people are going with that. Um, of maybe I spent my 20s deconstructing, and then I came across process theology, uh, most of it coming out of Claremont School of Theology, working with Marjorie Suhaki and John Cobb. And I found within process theology probably the most helpful answer to the question of how can we believe in an all-loving God
mm,
while there's still suffering that's happening in the world. Um, because it comes down to the question of we can either have an all-loving God or an all-controlling God, but we can't have both um, because we've all experienced controlling relationships where people say that they love us by exerting some sort of control. And what most therapists will say is that is the recipe for an abusive relationship.
mm,
So, an all controlling God would have to answer for a lot of things that are happening in the world. It also begs the question as to why Jesus asks us to pray for God's kingdom to come and God's will to be done, uh, because if those two things are happening, and prayer, so is that just busy work, or or is there work to be done? So that was extremely helpful for me to then move back into a deeper or more um, the call to ministry, which I had always experienced in my life. It suddenly became a more specific call to help people recover from religious trauma, from religiously traumatic upbringings, um, toxic theology, to help people detox from Sunday school, or these um, kinds of kinds of theologies that want to present themselves in such a way that it's benign, that it's we have all the answers, but those churches have revolving doors that when people don't people come to the end of their questions and find that the pastors don't have all the answers, they move on to trying to find something someplace else. So
Mhm.
so yeah, my journey has been one of moving ever more to the to living the questions rather than trying to offer out answers. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting the kind of overlap of our, our stories in that way. So I have no background of super religious conservatism.
Uh-huh.
I've always been United Methodist. So were my parents, so were my
Right.
grandparents.
Right.
So I have always known this general like family of faith traditions to be home.
Right.
But I've also kind of learned that in the same way that you would look at your home and your upbringing and your family tree and dig into it in your adult life and start to
Right.
see that it's not perfect. And in
Right.
fact, if you did like an ancestry.com on
Oh
your
yeah.
own
Right.
family, and then
Yes.
you discovered that, a couple generations back, there were some people that did some pretty horrendous things that
Oh
your grandparents made haste to cover up and get rid of.
yes. Yes.
That's what it is to be United Methodist for me.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the upbringing was um it's all that my parents knew. It's all that my parents know. And so sometimes when you're steeped in it, you don't realize how traumatic it is
Yeah.
until the curtains have been pulled back. Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes just when you're going through the journey of parenting yourself,
Oh
you
yeah.
also see, I'm standing on the riverbanks of a place where ancestors before me stood also with a canoe,
Yep.
and they had to decide which direction they were going to go.
That's
And
right.
I'm in the same place, and I have a lot of the same information, except I've also seen how one path goes. So
Right.
maybe I'm going to take a different path and
Right.
try it out. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
And the church is, the church has been the same way. So I've unfortunately seen that, we can love each other like family as United Methodists. We can also hurt each other as only family can.
Mhm. That's right.
And we have to love each other through both, and then we have to figure out a way to heal and live with both.
Yes.
It's a journey. And you and I have known each other for a long time, so we've
Right.
we've both known different generations, different eras of one another, to use Taylor Swift language.
Yes. Exactly.
Um,
Yes.
I was like 22 when you met me, and I was just starting at CRCDS. I just finished at the U of R.
Right.
You were still, I believe, the director of youth ministries at
Right.
Asbury in the
Yep.
city.
That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah. And yeah, it just, totally different, different time in my life.
That's right. That's
Now
right.
I am old and gray, and I buy paper towels in bulk, and
right.
I drive a
Right.
minivan. I have a completely different life now.
Yeah, yeah. But serving a congregation of predominantly older adults, I'm constantly reminded about how young we actually are. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
uh,
yes. Indubitably.
yeah.
Indubitably. I've been doing this ministry thing now. Well, I mean, you met me 17 years ago. I know,
It's
right?
kind of surreal, isn't it? Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah. Because I was
I,
doing the math, and this year's my 20th year in ministry.
yeah.
Uh, yeah.
So, and I was too young to be a pastor then, and I'm still too young to be a pastor.
Oh, we're always yes, um, and as I am finding out, both of us are too female in
Mhm.
some cases to be a pastor. That the the interesting thing about coming out as transgender is that if first of all, people will walk away because of the fact that I came out as transgender, and then
Mhm.
some people can still embrace the fact of, yeah, she's transgender, she's a woman, and therefore I too will walk because I don't want a female pastor.
Mhm.
So um, I am I am getting my crash course in the brunt of misogyny. Yeah, in a number of different ways. Which, as I've shared a few posts on Facebook in regards to this, but it's a crash course as to what happens when I do lay down the benefits that I was reaping by presenting as white cis male.
Yeah.
That there were definitely benefits.
Mhm.
The benefits far outweighed the costs when it comes
Mhm.
to being clergy, or any part of society. So, um, uh, emptying myself of those things, I'm now just beginning to experience what other women clergy have had to bear the brunt of. Um, so it is a sense of there's a sense of repentance, um, uh, but there's also a sense of reflection in saying, I don't think that there were some aspects of this that I would have even been able to know if not for this experience. Yeah.
Mhm. I think part of what you're seeing also is how much clergy women hide and
Yes.
veil so that we
Yes.
can take care of these cis white men by
Yes.
by not allowing them to see what goes on behind that curtain,
Yes.
so that
Yes.
we can take care of them, we can
Right.
preserve their view of the world and their view of the church. And like
Yes.
we go back here and we deal with it and we
That's right.
clean it up and then we come out looking fabulous.
Right.
And, so yeah, welcome to the other side of the curtain.
Right. Right. And so I'm still really new to this. So
Yeah.
we'll take we may need to come back and look at this a couple of
Yeah.
months or years later, and I may need to do retractions. We do the best that we can in these moments, but I find that I find myself in a strategic calling, not one that it's not like in September when I decided to go to Planned Parenthood for HRT that I said to myself, this would be a fantastic career move. Coming out as transgender as a pastor, I think that's a solid move
Mhm.
in ministry. You find that you come to a point in your life as transgender that you just you can't do the mask anymore. You can't do the disguise anymore. You don't want to do the disguise anymore. It's making you miserable. And so by taking that mask off, now I find myself in a strategic position that, you know, uh, I, I spent 50 some odd years um, in the other group's locker room.
Mhm.
So I, I know the strategies. I know the secrets. I know I've experienced those things. Um, but hopefully, and I know it's stream of consciousness here, but hopefully, what people are able to see if they were to go back um, is that they would see the same breadcrumbs that I'm seeing going
Mhm.
along. Is that this isn't my coming out isn't a betrayal or that I had been quote unquote living a lie. That would be if somebody was a hellfire and brimstone preacher that
Mhm.
was preaching against LGBT, preaching against transgender, and then suddenly being found out, and then having to confess in a reactionary sort of way. Um,
Mhm.
we can look back at the breadcrumbs of being able to just say on record, you can review the footage, is that I've been a feminist, womanist, theologian, and preacher all the way
Mhm.
through. I've been advocating all the way through that this isn't a betrayal. The only betrayal I think that people are experiencing is the version of me that they have created in their own minds,
Mhm.
that they created the product of the stereotypical white cis male pastor that has good preaching abilities, has a certain confidence at the pulpit, charismatic, and people like that product, right?
Mhm.
And so there's that production consumption mentality that happens in the midst of all of this. That I have now changed the product. That I haven't changed the recipe of the product. I've just changed the label on the outside of the product.
Mhm.
Um, I heard the story one time of somebody that loved Mountain Dew. Um, but they drank Mountain Dew, and they always drank Mountain Dew out of the green glass bottles.
Mhm.
Then, once they poured it into a glass and they saw that the Mountain Dew was green, they immediately stopped drinking Mountain Dew. They thought that it was the bottle that was green and not the liquid inside of it. Um, I think a lot of people are experiencing that with me, but that's because they were and might at this point be unable to see that this has been me the whole time. I've just changed the way that the wrapping looks. Yeah,
Mhm. I feel like the image that I have in my head is kind of like I was seeing the night sky and the stars hadn't come out.
right,
The sky is the same, but then you started punching holes through the canopy and
right,
the light started coming out, and now there are brilliant stars.
right.
It's the same sky,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
it's so beautiful.
Right. Plato's cave allegory
Mhm.
fits so neatly within this of you've got somebody who's escaped the cave, has gone out, sees that there's real world, goes in and tries to get everybody else to,
Mhm.
break free from the chains and says, there's a different reality outside here. And they're like, we don't trust you. We don't believe you, and they'd much rather stay in the cave.
Mhm.
Um, yeah,
Yeah. And and coming out as trans is especially in this era, it's a very courageous thing to do and to decide that the mask isn't worth it anymore because you're also facing a world that is decidedly and particularly hostile towards trans folks.
Right.
And perhaps even more so now than if you had come out 10 or 15 or 20 years ago.
Right.
We've made some social progress, but we've also made a tremendous amount of social regress because
Right.
the folks that really don't want this kind of freedom are digging their nails real, real,
That's
real deep to fight
that's
it.
that's right.
More so than they did a couple of decades ago.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Um, but this is the minority,
Hmm.
and but the minority, the haters, are intentionally wanting to make it seem as though the issue and the and and those who are embracing this authenticity of themselves, they're scared
Hmm.
and they do not like the world changing
Hmm.
from what they have wanted to create. Um, so it's a minority. Some of these minorities have found people like J.K. Rowling, who take their billions made off of a quote unquote children's book series that really, at the end of the day, when we pull back the curtain, it's just mediocre copying of C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien, full of racist stereotypes, just as much as Tolkien and Lewis did, as if Rowling didn't learn a single thing about updating. I even received pushback from people when I posted online that we need to go back and reread these stories now, knowing full well that the author was rooting for Voldemort the whole time. Um, uh, that people are trying to say that we need to separate the art from the artist. And my response is, so does that mean that you would defend having a watercolor painting that Hitler painted on your wall and saying it's important to separate the art from the artist? No, this is unacceptable. It's completely unacceptable. She's spending millions of dollars to and for what? To go after less than 1% of the population.
Hmm.
Why? Why punch down? Why are so many people punching down in these situations? Is because they're afraid of something. Uh, they're afraid of something. Not really sure exactly what it is, but it is a minority. We see statistic after statistic coming out as to how much advocacy, how much allyship is there. But what these groups want to do is scare the living daylights out of would be allies and would be advocates, that they're afraid that they're going to get caught in the crossfire, or that somehow it's going to impact their lives by standing and being counted. That's exactly what they want to do, is make this an issue. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but they actually just did a recent survey and a study as to how prevalent were official complaints in the UK about transgender people using bathrooms. Official complaints, four, a
Yeah.
total of four complaints
Hmm.
in their study, of official complaints coming in. In the whole UK, only four complaints came in. This is uh, the bathroom issue is concocted to create a culture war.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to create a scapegoat. I think
Yes.
one of the biggest things that, the haters, they
Yes.
fear your power and they fear your freedom.
Well, right.
They fear that that you can claim your identity for yourself and it
Right.
doesn't have to be given or prescribed to you. You can
Right.
just live into your truth. And they're
Right.
afraid because they might have truths within them that
Yes.
they're terrified of what they would give up if they expressed
Right.
them.
Right. Right.
Um, and so,
We have some we have males,
Mhm,
not all, of course, but we have some males that have grasped and exploited power, and they're scared to death that those of us who are transitioning are going to share the secrets, that
mhm,
we're going to that we were spies and that we are going to tell all the females that what the military secrets are from the men's locker room, and then you have the term TERF, trans exclusionary radical feminists, that see it from the position that there are those of us who couldn't cut it as men. So
mhm,
what we want to do is infiltrate the ranks of feminism so that we can take over those organizations and use our male privilege and power uh, to undermine feminism, which at the end of the day holds no data to support those hypotheses. There's just no data whatsoever to support that. Just as much as there's barely any data out there to go against those who've transitioned participating in sports. Again,
mhm.
another major news story that at the end of the day, when you look at the numbers, it's yeah, it just doesn't match up to the hype.
No, it's a don't pay attention to the man behind the curtain
That's
kind of
right.
situation. Put your
That's right.
attention here, don't
Right.
look over here situation.
Right. Right.
While we talk about this, especially being both clergy people,
Mhm.
I am curious. There's a story of a saint that I know because of a clergywoman that I served with in Schenectady who also came out as trans. Her name is Mother Grace. Um, and Mother Grace is very moved by the story of Saint Wilgefortis. I was wondering if you've heard this story before.
No.
Oh,
Sing.
you will love it.
Okay.
So Wilgefortis, so Wilgefortis. So
Okay.
Wilgefortis
Uh-huh.
was betrothed to marry a man, and as was the custom in Wilgefortis's day, her parents arranged the marriage. She wanted nothing to do with this, and she also not only did she not want to marry this particular man, but she didn't want to be married. It was the expectation placed upon her as a young girl in her society that you have no say over your own life and over your own choices. You're just going to do what we tell you to do. Your safety be damned. And so coming up into the wedding, she knew that her parents were fully committed to it, his parents were fully committed to it, and there was no way to get out of it. And the only way that the marriage would not happen would be if somehow her fiance, her betrothed, decided that he wanted to pull out of it. So she prayed to God as she was going to sleep, please do something to me that will make it so that my betrothed will break this marriage. Make it so that my betrothed will want nothing to do with me. And then the next morning, she woke up with a full beard. So says the legend.
Okay.
And then her fiance was repulsed by her new gender expression
Oh,
and pulled out of the engagement, and then she was crucified. And
Yeah.
so when you see Saint Wilgefortis depicted, she's depicted in her night clothes, usually with with slippers, one slipper coming off, as if she
Okay.
was dragged out of bed and put on the cross. But
Wow.
she looks like Jesus in a dress, and that's what we see because
Wow.
we associate. For some reason, even though we have no information to actually tell us this, we associate beard with Jesus, and we
Yeah.
certainly associate cross with Jesus.
Mm.
So, so it's this, it's this bearded person, but in a dress and in women's clothing, being crucified for being who they are and for wanting to live into their own truth and their own freedom. And she has become less so in America, but more so in Europe. A venerated saint, particularly amongst queer Christians, because of what she represents.
Yeah.
Um, and it's a really delicious story. I'm glad
Mm.
because and it's so I would know nothing of this were it not for Mother Grace. So I'm deeply indebted to her. Um, but it just speaks to, what this is. Like, we live in a world where you can decide that the institution that is powerful and there's nothing we can do, and we have to just live into the prescribed roles that we've been given at birth,
Right.
and so it shall always be, and we are just chained by it. Or we can decide, we can trust in God and trust in our own selves and in our own power, and then we can live into that power and buck the system,
Yeah.
even though we will face some big, flack for it. What can we do besides be ourselves and break the chains,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
So it's just this really powerful story of that, freedom from oppression that comes from that.
Right.
And I thank you that you have let us meet the butterfly version of you, that you have let us meet Philippa.
Right. Yep.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's it like I was saying before, you do finally get to a spot where you, at least for me, I got to a spot where I could not look in the mirror anymore and um be okay, be comfortable with reaping the benefits of white cis male privilege, knowing full well what I know about who I am. Um, right. Once I made that full decision, came to a full awareness in September of last year. This isn't a secret that this isn't like the transition secret that I held on to for years. A lot of it's hindsight of, oh yeah, I could have seen that. I could have picked up on it at this point. Signs along the way, but having made the full decision to embrace this and go this direction, I really didn't hold on to that in the background for too long. Um, Simply because of the fact that the hormone replacement therapy was doing exactly what it's supposed to do. This is why you find less than 1% of people detransitioning, is because of the fact that once they're out because they have been taking hormone replacement therapy in a lot of cases for long enough that they know that it's changed their lives. It's done the trick. And so that's why you don't see a lot of detransitioning happening. So by the third month, it was already very clear for me. Oh yeah, well, I knew within the first week with the first estrogen injection, I knew there was what they call, and I found this out afterwards, what they call trans joy, that there was this euphoria that happened where it was like, oh my gosh, this is liberating. This is how a person's supposed to feel, the happiness, the joy. Um, so that was really powerful for me, and getting to the point where it was like I knew that I didn't want to wear the disguise anymore. It didn't fit anymore, and uh, uh, I wanted people to be able to experience how happy I was,
Mhm.
or to know where the happiness was coming from. So fascinating to me is that when I called my parents and came out to them, before I even said anything to them, my dad said, because they would watch the Sunday services. Um, they would watch every service that I did, every message that I offered, and my dad said to me, "How are you doing?" And I said, I'm doing great." He goes, "I gotta say that uh, I would say since September, maybe." He's like, I've noticed that you have uh, this happiness, this he's like, you're glowing, your face is changing, you're radiant. And I said, well, that's why I was calling, is to tell you that I'm pregnant. But that was the joke. He was using the exact words that we say to describe a woman who is pregnant.
Mhm.
He was using those words before I even said anything. So he was affirming that he saw creative transformation in me. And
Mhm.
then when I actually told him what that creative transformation was, it was the end of the discussion.
Mhm.
That is so saddening and heartbreaking from the standpoint of, oh my gosh, you uh, uh, you'd rather be stuck in the cave looking at the shadows on the wall rather than actually experiencing real life. That
Mhm.
you would rather hold on to your ideology and the rhetoric that you get from the news station that you are glued to and cannot see any other way around this. Um, even talking to them about the fact that I'm asexual, aromantic, that this is gender identity, it still, in their mindset, was immoral. Okay, what behavior? What behavior? What scripture are you going to use to say that this behavior, what behavior? Um, even uh, I even wanted to say to my mom, who had a hysterectomy in her 20s, that she's told the story that she was fit to be tied with 4 kids within 5 years of each other. And she
Mhm.
was going absolutely frantic. And then she started hormones, and life was suddenly better. It was like, so it's okay for you to take hormone replacement therapy, but not for me, because you've got an ideological wall that you're unwilling to work through.
Mhm.
It's saddening. Um, I'm really not. In some cases, in some moments, um, I take it personally. Um, it's emotionally exhausting sometimes, and then there are the moments where reality comes in, and it's more often than not people robbing themselves of a blessing
Mhm.
of uh, not wanting to embrace another person's authenticity.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also I'm hearing this as a mom because because you brought up like your mother using HRT
Right.
and the way that the way that we describe your glow the same way
Right.
that the same way that we describe like a mother in like her first trimester who's kind of like masking it because like
Right.
like you don't kind of want to announce
Yeah.
it at work until you're
Yeah.
past like week 12 or 13. I've been
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
You gave birth to something new, but we live in a society that we don't let we want a police who can
Right.
give birth and when,
Right.
and almost dovetails us on a different conversation, but we want a police who is allowed to create and who is allowed to give life and when,
Yeah.
and instead you're just creating instead.
Yeah.
And you're creating alongside God, which is what God put us in the world to do.
That's the hope. That's the practice, right? Always practicing.
Yeah.
Practicing. Yeah.
I'm curious, in the face of a lot of opposition, and the opposition is strong, the wall is strong, and there's hearts that are going to need a lot in order to really see change. What can we do? So the spirit of what I do with this ministry is about how do we create inclusion? How do we expand the table
Hmm.
until we are not leaving people out in the fringes for
Hmm.
whatever trivial reason we have put on that person. So like for my
Right.
son Daniel,
Right.
he's not able to come and sit at the table the way that I do
Right.
because sitting just really doesn't work for him, and there's straight up physiological reasons for it,
Yeah.
like low muscle tone, low core strength that goes with his autism. ADHD, meaning that staying in one position for a long time is just straight up painful,
Right.
and him needing that big space of expression around him so that he can be fully himself, which just means that if you're going to be in a room with Daniel, well, if we're going to be at the dinner table, then give Daniel some space so that he has a
Right.
chair if he wants it, but then he can get up because some of
Right.
us do walk and eat at the same
Right.
time. It's
Right.
totally
Right.
possible.
Right.
So, in the same way, if that's what it takes to bring Daniel to the table, what
Right.
does a church for Philippa look like? How do we bring Philippa to the table? What do we do to create enough space so
Mm.
that this church can be more inclusive and a safer space where we're all here?
Yeah, so we may have to edit this or retract some things.
Yeah, no worries.
So where I'm at right now is that especially this week and last week
Yeah,
is
yeah.
we're finally getting a uh, uh, we're getting the full numbers of people that are leaving the church.
Hmm.
Um, that that the the time for us as the United Methodist Church to think that we could continue to be the hybrid Methodist Church that we've been,
Hmm.
because that's what we've been for the past 50 years. We have not been a united Methodist Church. We have been
Hmm.
a hybrid Methodist Church. Can't we all just get along? And
Hmm.
no, we can't all just get along,
Hmm.
because people took their ball and went home. Um,
Hmm.
and so what we're now dealing with is some churches, some local churches are are still in a situation where they're able to continue to be a hybrid Methodist church, that they new language, the new polity, the new structures that we have put in place hasn't filtered down into the day-to-day activities of the local church, so that people can still be um, members of a local church and be divided over the LGBT issue, but they are in a don't ask, don't tell. I am a pastor that I have to take full blame for trying to, all with good intentions, of course, right? Of hold the center as much as we can. Every sermon has to be done in such a way that somehow we can hold the center and not let the extremes go one way or the other. How do I say this in such a way that doesn't tick off either extreme? You know, I heard one person say long ago when it was the worship wars as to, so what we decided was that we were going to create a hybrid worship service that was going to have contemporary songs as well as traditional songs. And what we found out was that it was a very successful way to piss off everybody within the worship service, so that nobody was pleased by the end of it. So what's happening is we're now getting truer numbers of people that this is too much too fast. Some are saying, some are even trying to say, oh, it's not about the pastor transitioning. It's about the fact that we're going too far and we're going to be known as the gay church. The days, because of where we're at culturally in the United States, the days of us being able to be a hybrid Methodist church, of us being able to hold the center, those days are gone. Those days are gone. We can either do LGBTQIA plus inclusion, or we can create a safe haven for MAGA Christian nationalists. But we cannot have the big tent anymore that includes those extremes.
Yeah. Or if nothing else, there has so much corruption has come in to Christianity from some very toxic far right places
Absolutely.
that at this point it's bled together things that should have been separate, because a couple of generations ago holding the center would mean Christianity is this. It's here.
Yes.
It's this expression of Jesus. It's this expression of loving your neighbor. It is this.
Yes.
And it's very radical in its own right. It's here.
Right.
Whether you vote Republican, that's over here. Whether you vote Democrat, that's over here. It has nothing to do with it.
That's right.
Whether you watch Fox News that didn't even exist yet, but whether you do is over here.
At the very least, we could agree on compassion. At the very least, we could all sit and sing, "They'll know we are Christians by our love," and that is just no longer the case.
And now, we've got this fusion going on now where we've created this like mega block mess where we've got the Republican Party bleeding into what we call Christianity, bleeding into what we call white nationalism. And it's become so toxically entangled that we can't separate out any of those ideas from one another. And so it's becoming that, great compassion and love to you, my sister, my brother in Christ. But those things need to stay at the door, and I'm worried that you don't know how to, when I, because the messages that we're getting in the outside world of what it is to be Christian are now becoming indistinguishable from what it means to be a Republican and what it means to be a nationalist.
But even the term Republican, I have Republican siblings that disavow this, so that it's like the the term Republican, the term evangelical, these terms that once represented center or center right, moderate, that what has happened is that the right has subsumed those and pulled those terms to the extremes so that it creates a culture war, so that unfortunately, shout out to Chris Evans for teaching us historically that there was a major difference between fundamentalists and evangelicals. And then post 9/11, we see the movement of fundamentalists taking over, hostile takeover of the term evangelical, because they want to use fundamentalists for Islamists. They don't want to be known as fundamentalists anymore. So they take that term and they pull it over to this extreme side, so that it's done in such a way that you've got evangelicals that are like, well, what am I supposed to do? That's the term that I've always used. And I don't have another term that I can use, because I'm certainly not going to use the term liberal. The propaganda machine had already been in place and working to take over these things. So that what we're left with as a denomination, as a church, is that when we call out nationalism and try to separate that out from patriotism, is that people don't pick up on the nuance. And when we say that Christian nationalism is an oxymoron, they hear it as hate speech, and which is anything but. It's the role of us as pastors, as shepherds, to warn the flock of the sheep in wolves' clothing. But unfortunately, the propaganda machine is referring to us as the wolves. But yet the statistical data proves over and over again that white cis male evangelical pastors are more prone and have been convicted and found out a lot more in regards to pedophilia than you could ever find a transgender person being found in those situations. And yet we're the ones that get labeled as being immoral and corrupt and not in a right relationship with God, which is just beyond this.
It's exhausting. It's exhausting.
It is. And so then the question becomes, in these moments, someone will say, well, why aren't there more trans pastors? I think some trans pastors or trans people who have been called to ministry have been filtered out of the ordination process. So if they have come out before or during the candidacy and ordination process, I have heard stories of people being filtered out. And those of us that are in ordained ministry, that are already ordained, why don't we see more of us coming out? Well, because it's scary. It is. It is. Some would say risky, but I would say no. Actually, what was risky was continuing to risk my life with gender dysphoria, risking my life in misery of presenting a particular sort of way. That was riskier. That was playing with my life. Um, so where am I at? Uh, uh, eh, and then for those of us that have come out, the question is going to be how how long can we stay in a local church after we've come out as to uh, as to whether or not the church can weather that storm of the transition, weather the storm of that. Um, I would imagine financial setbacks as people vote with their feet and vote with their pocketbooks. Um, and so then the question becomes whether or not churches can actually sustain long enough for there to be a rebuilding, um, and really live into the safety, right? Live into it. So, for instance, right now, I added the pride flag next to the mission statement that's on our bulletins, where it
Mhm.
says, "Where God welcomes all, and we welcome all." And so I've got the pride flag there, and I think what I'm experiencing right now is a referendum on me, but what's being used is that pride flag for having the discussion as to are we on board with this or aren't we on board with this?
Yeah.
Um, and so it has become an issue. This pride flag is probably, the height of a 10-point font.
Yeah.
It's symbolic from the standpoint of saying when we say all, we mean all. Um, and what I'm experiencing is um, people's long held notions as to what that flag represents, um, and also their feelings on who would we really welcome? How much of this do we want to say in theory, but how much of this are we willing to experience in practice?
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
if I put the pride flag out, that
Mhm.
means that that we are saying that we are a safe place. Come join us. And I think that there are people that are scared that people will actually take us up on the offer.
Yeah. Yeah. And what you said a second ago about this is what we can welcome in theory, and it's such a bigger group than what we can actually welcome in practice.
Right.
Um, not to conflate two different experiences because they are in fact quite different, but it's what I've experienced with Daniel.
Mhm.
Um, that that we will profess when there are no kids at all in our sanctuaries, and there's no one, in fact, there's nobody left in the sanctuary who isn't eligible for the senior citizen discount at Denny's.
Right.
Like, we haven't had kids in decades. We would love kids so much. Oh my
Oh,
gosh.
yes, yes, yes,
Everyone, we love them
yes.
so much. And they'll profess so much of that in theory when they're not loving any actual real people.
That's
But then
right.
as soon as you bring an actual real child, like this requires
Why can't you
relationship.
get that child to behave?
Yeah. And also because in relationship, you have to love all of a person, not
Yes,
just the theoretical best things that you can imagine
yes,
in your head, but everything.
yes.
When someone else comes to church, random inconspicuous old person, they don't always come on their best day. They don't always bring their
Right,
best selves. Like I've seen
right.
every different shade of, some
That's
of
right.
these folks. So the
Right.
same is going to be true for kids. And then for somebody like Daniel, it's going to be really heightened. And
Yeah.
in churches, one of the biggest things that we have a problem with, transcending all the different labels that will stick on people about disability or about gender identity or about sexuality or about race or anything, is we
Right.
have a problem with conspicuousness.
Yes.
We like church to just be very uniform.
Mhm.
And we don't want anybody to stand out. Everybody stands at the same time when there's an asterisk in the bulletin. We sit at the same
Yes.
time when the
Yes.
asterisk goes away. We
Yes.
speak the bold-faced font in the bulletin and we say exactly the words that are printed in there and nothing else.
Yes.
And everything is nice and neat.
Yes.
And I have been told for myself that anytime that we start to break that, well, the fact that it's so that I always know what to expect, it makes this a safe place so that then I can start thinking about God. And, the direction I've tried and sometimes failed, but kept trying to push people in is that, well, you need
Right.
to be able to expect God everywhere, not just
Right.
when you feel so calm and regulated. It's
Yeah.
also ironic I'm having these conversations with folks who claim to not be neurodivergent.
Mm. Mhm.
But like we need to just let people be. And we need to accept like the fact that like the church is going to be a motley crew of all kinds of different people and we're all going to stick out because
Right.
if we love each other so much, then we're not going to see this uniform haze of faces that all present the same.
Right.
We're going to see each individual soul,
Right.
you know?
Yes. Yeah. And this is where it was foundational for me to trying to remember exactly which book it was. Maybe it'll come to me. Phyllis Tickle
Hmm.
really brought it down into three major categories of um, the churches that prioritize um, believing, behaving, or belonging.
Hmm.
And so much of what we've all experienced is either the prioritization of believing or behaving,
Hmm.
that we all have to believe the same thing. So let's focus on discipleship. Let's focus on continuing education. Let's focus on making sure that we all believe the right and same things. Or we have churches that the pastor is micromanaging people's behaviors so that their sermons are constantly talking about what people should be doing with their lives and judging, judging. And then there's the model of belonging. And that for me resonates so well. And I think that when it comes down to seeing the example of Jesus Christ, when we see the stories, when we see the way that he invites people in to the kingdom of God, that it is radical belonging. There's no entrance exams for these disciples. Um, the amount of time that Jesus focuses on their behavior or their beliefs, it's zero. He leaves them in a moment where it says, and some doubted. So if belief was the prioritization, there would have been some issues there. If behavior was an issue, after seeing how Peter reacted in Gethsemane with the arrest, he may have actually said, whoa, time out. I don't have all of your guys' behaviors in line just yet. It looks like I'm going to have to stay around a little bit longer before I feel like it's safe to leave. Uh, Acts just continues to show us that we've got badly behaving disciples. It's messy. It looks more like coffee fellowship than it does anything that we do in the sanctuary. Um, the radical belonging is where Jesus is healing people, healing women, and healing women of different religions. And Jesus doesn't stop for 1 second and say, before I do this, I need you to accept me as your personal Savior and Lord. And if you could just pray the sinner's prayer, then Franklin Graham will be able to rest easy 2,000 years later. Baloney. Baloney. Jesus heals, and then people feel that they belong,
Yeah.
or that he has already put out. He's already put out that it's already gotten to the towns before he even gets there. The example and the model, the stories have already come out. This is a guy who radically brings people in. He doesn't care what you believe. He doesn't care what your gender is. The story's gotten out so that by the time they show up, they're like, I can have the confidence to do this. And isn't that amazing how many times he says that your confidence is what has healed you, right?
Yeah.
We say your faith, but pistis is much better translated as your confidence has made you whole. Amazing. And so I think that that's what it's going to need to look like for us as a denomination. I think that's what it's going to look like for us as local churches, to weather, to trying to find a better term for it, not weather the storm, but to safeguard people's hope. To help safeguard people's hope that that in light of all of this cultural storm that's out there, is that we are going to be a place of radical belonging, radical hospitality. I sent it out to a church email, and I said the only unwelcome thing is an unwelcoming spirit. And it's amazing that there are we see it. That was not just a turn of phrase that I flippantly used. It is basically it's a calling out to those that are going to be unwelcome. Is that if you are going to come in here and convey an unwelcoming spirit, then you need to check yourself, because we're going to be on board for radical belonging. Yeah.
That speaks to me more in my present situation than you could possibly know, but that is the magic of the Holy Spirit.
Right.
Trust it.
Absolutely. Is that we're still so ingrained with proper behavior, as if there is anything that we could consider proper. What those two words mean is it conveys judgment. It conveys a mind state of judging, rather than embracing the practice of non-judging. Yeah.
Well, what we mean by that is typical behavior, because we're totally okay with phones ringing in the middle of the sermon and people accidentally dropping canes and walkers, and then people who can't hear very well having side conversations because they don't realize that we can hear
Yes.
them, and things like that. Like we expect that, so it
Yes.
just sort of becomes background noise
Right.
to us. But then
Right.
when somebody comes in with a new, well, this is me, this is my quirk, this is what
Right.
makes me wonderful,
Yes.
then we have trouble with it. It's not typical for us.
Grace for me,
Hmm.
justice for them.
Yeah.
Right? Is that I'm going to need you to overlook my idiosyncrasies, but we are going to need to harshly judge that person's bad behavior. Uh, It's moving past that practice of judging.
Mhm.
And it's so steeped within human organizations, transcends religion,
Yeah.
transcends Christianity. But this is where the practice of mindfulness meditation has
Mhm.
really been helpful for me of really leaning into these mindfulness practices and these tenets of these statements, these practices that just align so well with the example of Jesus Christ. That it's like practicing non-judging. Oh yeah, that's totally there.
Mhm.
Beginner's mindset. Unless you become like a child, you can't enter into the kingdom of God. It's a beginner's mindset, not an expert's mindset. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, this is oh gosh, this is so wonderful. And like I really can't overstate that like my prayers go out so during this time for you and during this time for your church and the church,
Yeah.
we got some stuff to figure out and
Mhm.
we always do. But we got some big stuff to figure out. So we all we can do is just continue to hold one another and then continue to seek justice, love mercy, and walk humbly in all three
Absolutely.
parts.
That's
We
right.
we we tend to focus on maybe one or the other on a particular day and not all three
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
The way that I have loved ending podcast recordings as long as I've been podcasting is to ask you if you could tell the world one thing about the divine, what would it be?
Um, freeing, freeing. Yeah.
Hmm.
It is a freeing love. It is a non-coercive love. Yeah. Yeah.
I adore that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's at the heart of process theology is that God is in the present moment. God is working with the world as it is to bring it to where it can be. So even though God has a subjective aim, we are that love means freedom, and that's it has to be at its very heart non-coercive. It has to be a freeing, unconditional kind of love. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that so much. So, Phil, thank you so much for joining this and
Thank you for
for
this. Yeah, this
empowering this.
yeah,
Because this helps everyone be freed in God's love, and it helps everyone, create a church for Daniel, a church
yeah,
for Philippa, a church for Natalie, a
that's
church
right.
for everyone.
That's right.
So, amen and thank you.
All right. God bless you. Thank you.
A Church for Daniel is produced with love by the Reverend Natalie Bowerman.